But now, like, we're joined every Thursday. We missed him last week because of Thanksgiving. Our man Tim McManus from ESPN joins us on the Comcast Business Hotline live from the NovaCare Complex. What's going on, Timmy?
What's up, guys? How are we doing today?
Not too bad, man. Always good to talk to you. But right before we come on the air, we get the big news about Jalen Carter. What can you tell us about that injury and his timetable for a return?
Yeah, so according to Adam Schefter, he had a procedure in both shoulders and is week to week. Could be ready before the end of the regular season. I think they're just going to kind of play that out to see how he recovers. But it was pretty noticeable when you saw him, especially on the field against the Bears. He just wasn't himself. And when we talked to him afterwards, he was talking about how he was getting pushed off the ball. And when it was brought to his attention, that's not normal for him. He said, well, I don't have to tell everybody what I'm going through. He's been dealing with this shoulder injury really for the bulk of the year. In fact, he missed the first 3 days of training camp because of the shoulder injury. It's been something that has popped up and has hampered him for a lot of the season. The numbers are pretty stark when you look at the impact of him on the field versus off. So when he is on the field, opponents' yards per rush is 4.2. That jumps all the way up, guys, to 5.1 when he is off the field, and their sack percentage dips down from 6.1 to 2.6%. So whether you're looking with your own eyes or you look deeper at the numbers, Jalen Carter's an impact player, and the absence of him is very significant.
All right, we do know that the Eagles put in a claim for Darius Slay. Okay, now he has turned down the Bills. Is there still an opening or a possibility that Slay ends up an Eagle?
I think so. The Bills will have to play along with this, and so if they grant him his release and then he's free to sign anywhere, it sure seems like there's a lot of mutual interest there with him rejoining the Eagles, and so that could be something that transpires here. Whether that's a fix for the defensive secondary, I think is a different conversation. I mean, the version that I think we're used to as Philadelphians of how he looks out there, really being an impact player, is different than what he was showing in Pittsburgh. And in fact, his playing time was reduced as the season went on. He was a healthy scratch in this past game, and ultimately they decided to move on from him. And so I don't know that he's going to be the salve for a defense that looks like it's starting to run into some issues, but they traded for Jair Alexander, who has since retired. They're looking for reinforcements, and I could see a pathway for Slay still ending up here.
Interesting. I got a question about this offense for you, because clearly they've struggled all season long, and a lot of people are looking for one person to blame, whether people feel it's the coordinator or the head coach or the quarterback. But the question I have for you is, when you look back at Sirianni and Hurts over the last 5 seasons, they've always been in the bottom of the NFL in terms of pass attempts. Now, is that because that's Nick Sirianni's philosophy, or are they just trying to play to the strengths of what Jalen Hurts does and doesn't do well?
Yeah, I mean, we've seen Sirianni in different stops, depending on the quarterback, that the offense can look different. And it's no coincidence that during the time that he's been paired with Hurts that it's looked similar, despite who the offensive coordinator is. So I think that you're always playing to the strengths of your quarterback. And I can point back to the beginning of last year, Bill, where they sort of tried to be a passing team, and it didn't work. Hurts was right up there at the top of the league in turnovers. Remember, the offensive linemen go into Nick Sirianni's office during the bye. They knock on the door. They say, we got to run the ball. And sort of they changed back to more of a run-dependent offense. And so I think that is what's best suited for this group with this coaching staff and this quarterback. And I think that you're right to sort of, circle the QB here right now, because there's been a lot of problems on offense. I think we all understand that it's all connected, that what the offensive front does is going to affect what the running back does, is going to affect what the quarterback does. But I was looking at Hurts' numbers, and it is interesting that weeks 1 through 9, he had a 70% completion rate, which was 7th best in the league. And then weeks 10 through 13, that's dropped all the way down to 59%, which is 23rd in the NFL out of 33 qualified quarterbacks. Just to say what we see, which is that the quarterback play has not been good enough, particularly over the last few weeks. Now, of course, win was a factor in 2 of those games, needs to be taken into consideration. But now you're facing a pivotal point in your season. reeling from 2 losses. City's wondering if a collapse is at hand. You're shorthanded with your best defensive player is out. You don't have your other best player in right tackle Lane Johnson. Monday night on the road against another 8-4 team. And this is a moment where Jalen Hurts needs to step it up. This is a moment where he needs to take it upon himself, show a little bit of the Super Bowl MVP form, and make sure that the season doesn't start slipping away from him. So, a lot of blame to go around, but ultimately it's a quarterback league. And this is a big-time moment for QB1 here in Philadelphia.
We are talking to ESPN reporter Tim McManus. Tim, the one thing that's kind of really jumped up a little bit is the Eagles' defense. I mean, we saw 2 really good weeks, but which defense is the real defense that we're seeing? The one against the Packers and the Lions, or the one we just saw against the Cowboys and then the Bears?
898 total yards over the last 2 games, guys. I mean, that's unbelievable. That's the second most yards given up in the Sirianni era. And I don't want to say that's who they are. I think, especially when we look at what they have been under Vic Fangio, we know that they have the capabilities of being one of the top units in the NFL. But the word that keeps coming into my mind this week is attrition. Repeating as champions is very hard. It's for a number of reasons, but attrition is right up there. Like, when you go through that long of a season, to be able to mentally and physically repeat that at the same level is very difficult. And so you look at Jalen Carter, like, think of all the snaps that he logged last year and think of the effect that can have. And he's still playing a ton of snaps now, and then, he starts to deal with the shoulder injury, and then production from an all-pro caliber player starts to really dip down. If you look at a couple of their really bad performances this year, they were both on short weeks where they just weren't able to sort of rev it up to the same level and have that same kind of physicality. And over the last handful of weeks, they've been playing a ton of defensive snaps. And so eventually that kind of stuff kind of creeps up on you. We have talked in the past about, like, the 23 season and how it started on one side of the ball. So that started on the defensive side of the ball, cracks in the foundation, started impacting the offensive side of the ball, and eventually the whole thing fell apart. What you have to avoid is, after having an entire season to this point of the offense not holding its weight for the most part, are you starting now to see some residual effects on the defensive side that could lead to a slide in its own respect? So talent-wise, I think that they have the ability to be up there where they were before. But whether sort of the attrition of multiple seasons now coming down on them, mixed with the fact that the offense, has forced them to really carry a lot of the weight this year, that's been a cumulative thing that is having a negative impact on them. And I don't know that gets terribly better as a long season goes along.
Man, oh, man. Well, the drama never stops. We'll see how it all plays out, Tim. I know you got to get into the locker room as you're down at the NovaCare complex, but we always appreciate you joining us. You'll be on Middays tomorrow, right, with Johnny Marks?
Yes, looking forward to that. Always good to talk with you guys, and can't wait till next week.
All right, my man. There he is, Tim McManus of ESPN. He does a really good job.
What's up, everybody? It's Bill Colarulo from Unfiltered with Ricky Bo and Bill Colarulo. Thanks for watching. Make sure you're subscribed to our YouTube channel because we post a ton of content. It's not just what you hear on air. We're posting content all day long. We do some things before the show, after the show, even stuff during the show. So subscribe, like, do whatever you got to do. We got all this content coming to you every single day.